yes, my name is TJ Chernick, and I am the director of NGLCC New York, the New York chapter and affiliate chamber of NGLCC. And I'm going to take a second to share my screen. There we are. Oh, I was so ready. I was so ready for you all. But again, really excited to be here. The Matchmaker program really is my baby and something I truly enjoy getting to help LGBT suppliers get access and help collaborate and get connections to corporate partners and each other to grow their business. I recently joined the NGLCC supplier diversity team to become a New York certification specialist. So I'm also in conjunction with being the director of NGLCC New York for the past 2 years. I've been involved with NGLCC NY for the past 7, but for the past 4 months, I've been working with the supplier diversity team at NGLCC to do all the certification processes for all of New York City and state. So I have a really exciting, true understanding of both certification as well as chamber involvement. So I'm very passionate about chamber involvement. So the fact that all of you are here learning about this, that all of you are supporting the summit excites me greatly. So let's start from the beginning here. What is a matchmaker meeting? So you might have gotten a general structure, but just to break it down, a matchmaker meeting is a 15-minute introductory facilitated meeting with either a corporate partner, potentially for contracting, or with another supplier if you're doing business to business. You will have a 5-minute break in between. And generally, if you have around 2 or 3 meetings, depending on the size of the event, honestly, any meetings, no matter how many meetings you have, is super important, because even that one introductory meeting can really be really special for your business. So why me? Why should you listen to me about any of this stuff? I have been the team lead for NGLCC for the Matchmaker program for the past 5 years. I've had the honor and privilege to work with the team to grow it from a once a year business to corporate, an LGBTBE to corporate meeting that happened once a year at the conference. We then grew it to a once a year business to business and business to corporate opportunity, and then grew it to a multiple times a year. And now we do it almost every month. And we do events for matchmakers that range from business to business to corporate, legal industry, billion-dollar roundtable. We do cross segment community matchmakers that includes transgender, non-conforming, communities of color, industry specific, the food and beverage, pharma, marketing related services. I say this all not to toot our own horn or anything like that, but to say that I've seen and gotten to connect with a lot of suppliers and buyers about Matchmaker. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm also for NGLCC NY, we host a yearly biz pitch competition hosted by Ernst & Young, which we've been putting on for the past 4 years. And I'm also on the National Biz Pitch Selection Committee for the national conference every year. That to say, I have seen so many pitches. I've worked with hundreds of suppliers, hundreds of buyers. I've gotten to work with them specifically, do webinars for preparation for matchmakers. So I have spent with our team years putting together what we believe is the best practices, the tips and tricks to get the most out of a 15-minute introductory session, which can be so quick, but so powerful. And that said, there's a few things to keep in mind. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break these tips and tricks down to you, and I'm going to start as if this was a date. We're going to start at the table. We're going to talk about what we're going to do at the table, and then we're going to look above the table and beyond on how to get the most out of this experience. And if along the way you have any questions, please just feel free to put them in the chat. I love to use the chat, and in fact, if you're using the chat right now, let me see a little action in that chat. Let me see that you're here with me, because I know, especially if you've been doing a lot of these all days, it's hard to keep it. That's what I like to hear. Hi, Christy. Hey, Dallas. Nice to see you. But I'm excited. Hey, John. Awesome. So let's start at the table, because this was the date. So first, before you even sit down at the table, if it was a matchmaking date, you probably would have Facebooked or Instagrammed them by now, right? So first thing is to remember to do your research. Speak confidently because we already know that you're an expert in the field. If you're this far and they selected you, you're the expert. But do your research. Don't ever sit down at that table and ask them, so what do you need? What do you want? You come to that table knowing what that company is, knowing what they do, looking at what the breadth of and scope of their work is. And then second, don't, again, as I just said, don't ask them what they need. I've had a lot of buyers tell me that one of their favorite things that a supplier can do is to propose a solution for a problem that they didn't even know they had. One success story was, I believe, with Ernst & Young, and the buyer doing the biz pitch or the matchmaking, he had read their annual report and discovered that they had a retention problem with millennials. And he came to the table and said, with my services, I bet we could bring in new millennials and keep them retained with my services. So they loved that he was already proposing a solution just as he had sat down at the table. And that a lot of buyers, and again, this is over years of interviewing and working with buyers, there's a big debate on the one page or the capability statement. Some people love them, some people hate them. But a lot of buyers really do love to have a one-page takeaway, a one-page description of your products and services, clean and beautifully made, that you can leave with them. That also includes the scope of your work. So if you've ever worked with any other large companies or large projects, put that on their list so they can see actual descriptions of what you do in pictures. Pictures, if your company needs pictures are great. They love that. I do have a number of suppliers who specifically say they are anti one-pager, and they specifically think that their pitch is so good that if they have a business card with their picture on it, that alone is good enough. So kind of a great debate, but a majority of buyers will always say have a capabilities deck ready and a one-pager for them to take away, because they often want something physical to take away. Know your, okay, this is the one that not everybody wants to hear, but it's one that's super important and is something to really consider. But knowing your capacity and scaling capabilities is huge. Controversial, but often said by buyers. A lot of people think that if you function at 500,000, a lot of people think that the $2 million contract is what's going to get them to the $2 million mark. And that is a really dangerous thing to say, because they need to know that you're going to be able to meet them where they are and scale quickly. You don't want to miss an opportunity because you weren't able to scale to capacity quick enough, and then ultimately destroy that relationship with that potential buyer. So it's a realist and reflecting moment for you to realize where you're at in your business. If you are able to scale, if as long as you are comfortable in scaling that quickly, I think that's just something to consider. And then another not so enjoyable thing is enter into the portal. I will tell you this: procurement portals, I understand, are the worst. They take so much time and effort, but I can tell you, 90% of the time, the first thing, even if it was a great matchmaker and one-on-one, they're going to want to know, are you in the portal? So if the person or company that you are matchmaking with has a portal, make sure that you're in it, because that will save you. You'll be able to answer that first question. I'm already in it, so what can I do next? I think that's a really good benefit. And sometimes that hour or however long those portals take can really serve to your advantage. And then looking down, like taking it down a step, and not just thinking about corporate to business matchmaking, but thinking about the value of tier 2 collaboration. So as a level set for those who may not have heard that term, a tier 1 contract is a contract that you receive directly from a corporation. That means that you can work directly with a Chase, a Wells Fargo, a Bank of America. I don't know, I'm only naming financial institutions, EY, but you can work directly with them from construction to from consulting to anything like that. So you're a tier 1 contractor. A tier 2 contractor means that you would work directly with a tier 1 to fulfill a contract. Many corporations actually count tier 2 spending when it comes to minority business spend. So let's say you're Chase and you are building new banks in the West Coast, and they need an architect to design them. Well, if they hire an architect who can then hire on-site construction workers. I'm not even sure if that's how it works with that particular industry, but that type of tier 2 spend is often counted. So it's great for you to really think this next point, which is to remember the importance of supplier to supplier connections. It is one of the reasons you join your local chamber, is to connect with one another, not only to build your business network, which I think is number one, but to connect with one another and figure out how to collaborate. It's often not, when you join your local chamber, it's not always about finding your next client in the room. It's about finding your next collaborator, the people that can help you fulfill these contracts. I have this amazing supplier who is just a superstar at these matchmakers, and they knew that they were able to take on tier 1 contracts, but they were certain that they weren't able to do. So they teamed up with another high capacity supplier to take on a behemoth, Coca-Cola. And because of their, she was a woman and LGBT owned business, and he was an LGBT owned business. They were able to work together to fill a huge tier 1 contracting opportunity. So it was super exciting for them, and then allowed them with that to scale both of their businesses to take on even bigger contracts and more elaborate contracts. And then remember, this is the thing that if you could take any of this away, because this is a 15-minute introductory meeting, and now it's starting to sound like a really exciting opportunity, hopefully, but this is the first step to a long-term relationship. Play the long game. I will say, not unlike a first date, it is rare that if you sit down at a table for a first date that you know right then and there that you're going to marry them, right? It takes time to build trust and so forth and so on. And sometimes these are really long engagements. So I would say that a majority of any successful matchmaker, the success comes often years down the road. And don't let that scare you, though. There's important actions of following up, keeping in people's world, following up every few months with exciting updates from a match that you had that said, look, this is what I'm doing. This is the newest things. This is how we've grown. And just keeping in people's minds is super important, because one day an RFP or opportunity is going to come along, and you are just going to pop right into their brain. And that is when it happens. That's the magic spot, because you've cultivated that relationship, that idea of who you are, and that's when they find you. And I've had some amazing suppliers that have played the long game to up to 5 years. I hope that doesn't scare anybody, but really exciting opportunities have come across their desk simply because they were just constantly, they would show up to every matchmaker, they would show up to every webinar, they would show up to every corporate event possible, and then eventually it came along. I had one executive coach that was wanting to consult directly with a corporation for the longest time, and worked with one supplier diversity procurement person. And it wasn't until he came to every event, did every opportunity that corporation offered for suppliers, every single thing over the course of 2 years, it finally happened. So just remember, play the long game. It can be worth it in the long run. And as I mentioned, I work directly with suppliers and buyers, and here's 2 quotes that I think really help some of these points stand out. This was a corporate partner that said, remember to also connect with other suppliers. Not every company is ready to take on the big contract yet, but when you connect with other LGBT BEs, you can often collaborate and team up with them to improve your offerings to us. It just goes to elaborate on a point that I was saying earlier about collaborating with each other. And then this is from a supplier. Don't worry so much about selling yourself and your product. Start building a relationship. This is a long game. So remember that this is the first step, and make an impression. This particular LGBT BE is really fantastic, because when they walk into a room, they are honestly never concerned about finding their next client. They are more concerned about getting to know the other person, making connections for the people that they're trying to meet, and really putting themselves second to the opportunity of building the thing around them, building the trust in the relationship. So with that said, I hope that has helped clarify some of the points on how to get the most out of a matchmaker experience. I think that these rules apply whether you are doing a B2B or a B2C matchmaker. Remember, this is an incredible opportunity for you to start a relationship that hopefully will last for years and bring you a lot of success. And with that, I'm happy to, I don't know if I should open it up, but Jeremy, if there's a few questions I can answer, I can help answer on the back end. Otherwise, I can hand it off to you.
Sure. So everyone, as you know, there's a chat box where you can drop questions in. Then there's also a Q&A function where you can type questions. You can also, I think, raise your hand and I can give you the ability to speak. So would love to hear a question or if anyone just has a thought about anything you've heard. If we have any procurement or supplier diversity professionals who have gone through matchmaking and maybe want to share some other tips or best practices that you think folks should be aware of, please also let me know and I'd be happy to let you speak or you can type it or whatever it might be.
And and just to reiterate, if I may, some important things to also to keep in mind are some of the opportunities. If you're certified, there are opportunities that NGLCC offers, including Sip and Pitch Fridays, which is an opportunity for you as a supplier to apply and give a 10-minute pitch of who you are to a panel of various corporate partners, specifically for the reason of feedback, to learn how you're telling the story of what you do. We do our Biz Pitch competition for that very reason locally, for the idea of how to really tell your story. We have a lot of suppliers that work specifically with storytellers to get to a point where they can do these types of pitches with comfort and ease, to know that they're telling the story of their brand and who they are and really bring that sense of enjoyment and trust. So that's just another tip of the trade that has come to mind.
Perfect. TJ, we did get a question from Christy with Content Maven Media. Christy asks, how do you suggest playing the long game? Is it email only? Is it phone calls? Is it cards? What's the best way to make this happen?
Oh, Christy, that is such a good question. I would say it is what you think is best. I would say phone calls is a little more tricky. It is often, they don't like phone calls. If you're setting up phone calls just to connect, that's one thing. So I would say cold calls, probably from my experience, aren't the best way to approach it, but I leave that, to your own discretion. Emails, super important. Registering them for your newsletters is a smart move if you can get if you can convince them to give you their email. Cards, absolutely. I think one thing that one supplier I did, I think that they played the long game, was with a promotions company, and they would just send a really kind, fun gift their way every so often, just to say, hey, it's me from the conference. Just thought about you. Here's something to remember me by. So anyway, it's a good way to do it. And I think it's whatever works best for you, but those are a few ways.
So TJ, I'll just ask you one other question. So as you know, hopefully next summer, we'll all be back together for an awesome International Business Leadership Conference, IBL. So for those who may not know, NGLCC does host an annual conference where you can come together for better networking and more special, more elevated matchmaking event. TJ, anything that you want to add about conference or things that folks should look forward to for next year?
Yeah, so I think all of us are all of us chamber leaders especially are trying to figure out what that transition looks like. But with the grand scheme that 2022 is going to be all in person and good to go, the NGLCC National International Business and Leadership Conference happens once a year. For those who may not have gone, it is a once a year opportunity that it moves around the country, and I believe next year it will be in Las Vegas, and it is where all of the 2,000 plus NGLCC certified suppliers come together, the corporate partner, procurement and supplier diversity professionals, as well as the international affiliate chamber leaders all come together. And there are educational tracks, there are networking opportunities, walk and talks, matchmakers in person, multiple sessions of those, educational events for you as LGBT BEs to connect directly with procurement specialists to learn how to enter into certain procurement markets, best practices, one-on-one connections with your peers, all kinds of great stuff. And I always say that it's probably, if you're certified and you're able to participate, I really think it's where the goals of your certification all aligns. It also helps to really put together the thing that certification is. It helps it all come together. And I would say the most interesting thing, if you've never been, if you're in Chicago right now, we're often very lucky to be out business owners if we can. We not always can, but I think something that's really special. I've always said the only people that understand the plight of the entrepreneur are other entrepreneurs, and the only people that understand the plight of the LGBT entrepreneur are others. And that conference is where you can feel all of that come together. People from all over the country, all over the world, who own their businesses come together and get to be truly themselves and build their businesses together. And I think it's a truly magical opportunity. And one other thing, NGLCC, as it stands right now, will be doing an in-person summit in Hollywood, Florida in November. And there will be, it will have a dinner aspect, connecting opportunities, as well as matchmaker programs. But just so all of you know, if you don't feel safe or comfortable doing that, you can also register to attend the virtual matchmaking program, which will be a component. So taking into account a lot of changing things that are happening right now in the community with COVID, but there will be virtual matchmaking opportunities regardless at that summit. So some opportunities coming up.
Perfect. Thank you so much, TJ. And also everyone, we hopefully we'll be doing it next year also, but we do, in the past, we have offered an opportunity for 2 separate businesses to win travel and registration to the conference. You would be responsible for paying for your lodging. So we definitely hope that you'll stay engaged with us as that opportunity is hopefully presented to you next year. TJ, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of these best practices. We really appreciate it. And now I know that everyone is confident for tomorrow. So one quick thing, I see there was another question.
I was gonna say,
the person you meet with at a matchmaker or other events isn't the buyer for your service. Were you typing? So any recommendations for the correct way to ask for introductions to the right person?
So this is a fantastic question, because this will often be the case. It's the gatekeeper conundrum. Often the people that will come to conference or participate are a step in between you and the person that will actually be signing that contract for you. And this kind of goes into the long game. So I would say the correct way, you can ultimately ask, if you would like, in the initial meeting, how the structure of their hiring processes work, from the portal to who signs it, figure out the structure of procurement, because every single company is going to be different. Some you will be just sitting down with a person that would sign that contract and they're there for you. And then there's the other ones that there are layers that keep in between you and the procurement person that would ultimately hire you. And I would say the correct way is to regard, if you feel that that is the gatekeeper person, you're going to have to probably do a little more legwork and make sure that you're staying in their world enough that they can start mentioning you to them. The correct, again, when it comes to contact, it is what is most appropriate for you and your company. But the emails, just staying up to date, following up, making sure that your emails maybe always have a question, end with a question, so you can continue the communication. Because ultimately you're going to have to win the trust of the person that you met with to get you to that next step. You can always ask if you are able, am I able to have a conversation with any of your other colleagues to help, get the word out about what I do, because I'm super passionate about this and making sure that it solves this problem that you have, like that. So a few ways to do it, probably not a correct way, because they all work a little bit different and the structures are all a bit different. So I hope that helps, but I know it's a little tricky.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, TJ. And thanks everyone for joining for the matchmaking best practices session. So do you want to wrap this up?